Tonight, we are joined in studio by Spider-Man. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. The voice of Spider-Man from Marvel's Spider-Man on Disney XD, Robbie Daymond. And we have some special, very exciting news about Iron Fist, don't we, Zia?
Yes, we do.
Marvel TV Weekly starts now.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Well, if you're going to have the Spider-Man theme, you might as well go with the Ramones version, which Zia didn't even know existed until 2 weeks ago. So I'm happy to bring it to all of you. Welcome to Marvel TV Weekly. I am Christian Bladt, and as I just mentioned, joined by Zia Landerson, and Kari Lane.
What's up, everybody?
Amy Cassandra Martinez on assignment, but in her place we have a very special guest, Robbie Daymond, the voice of Spider. Whoa, that was a really abrupt.
Yeah.
What happened there? I didn't say turn off the Ramones, but Robbie Daymond, the voice of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, by the way. I think it's worth pointing out.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Okay, sorry. And you're on Twitter at Robbie Daymond, Daymond, and the website RobbieDaymond.com. Now, we are going to talk a lot about Spidey, but we wanted to get through a couple of quick things to do with news, and you might have a little bit of insight on one of them. Anthony, the first thing I wanted to mention is I think we have a quick look, maybe a still, maybe a little bit of a clip, but the Disney XD Black Panther animated series is something that's going to launch soon. Now, I guess it's really just the Avengers series, but this year it's going to be all about Black Panther. Cool. So not a bad decision. Now, Robbie, can you confirm or deny the fact that perhaps a certain wall crawler will make an appearance in this season of the Black Panther TV series?
I'm pretty sure I can confirm, considering the VP of animation let that slip at Comic-Con. So I don't think it's a secret.
Yeah.
He's the best and the worst. He's like, should we tell? And he'll ask everyone, should we tell? And he'll just go, I'm going to tell it, like right in the middle of.
It would be great if it was, should we tell everybody that Spider-Man's going to be? Oh, nuts. Yeah. So it's really Marvel's Avengers, but this season is called Black Panther's Quest, and it'll start actually this month. That's coming up. So wait, no, today is September. So yeah. So it is September. Yeah. So that's great. Now we have a little bit that we can see, right, Anthony? And do I have to talk over it, or I forget the rules on these things?
Just talk a little bit over it.
Just talk a little bit over it.
But
All
for
right.
the most part, yeah, we can let it ride.
We can let it ride, but so that's exciting, and I'm going to be honest that I knew that there was a Marvel's Avengers series. Did not know that we were going to get a whole season of Black Panther, so I'm pretty excited to hear that. Zia, thoughts about getting another animated series to keep tabs on Disney XD?
Oh, I love it. It makes me feel like I'm a kid again, first of all, which is amazing. All I need is cereal and I'm set. Second of all...
Wait, important question. Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, what are we talking?
Oh, like Golden Grams or... I mean, Honey Bunches of Oats is kind of a healthy one, but...
What happened to you? Okay.
What is that?
So
Okay.
I guess the good cereals don't make it to Hawaii. Is that what happened?
I mean, we got some good cereals
Zing.
there.
It's not a good kid's cereal
lot of
unless
stuff.
it cuts the roof of your mouth.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
how you know
Yeah.
you're eating a sugary piece of wheat garbage.
My dad was a very healthy guy.
If you're not bleeding at the end, you haven't done it right.
Messing up.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm boring. I'm all Crispix, Wheaties.
Well, yeah, but
Where the Cocoa Puffs at?
Yeah, now you're
Okay.
talking. How about Cookie Crisp? What a great idea. It's like, oh, what's the worst thing we could possibly give kids in the morning? I know, little cookies.
I
yeah,
love
no.
that.
I mean, as a kid, sure.
I thought they were so disappointing because you're expecting cookies, but they're not cookies. Like,
Okay.
I wanted the cookies, but...
This is fair.
Fair
And I
point.
was
How
like,
are they
what?
not cookies? They
Too small?
They look exactly like
Textured
cookies.
wrong.
Yeah, they just
That's
don't
what
have...
matters.
Have you never had a crispy cookie before?
I wanted little mini Famous Amos,
Crispy on the
you know?
outside.
All
Soft
right,
on the
well,
inside.
that's easy enough. We'll get a bowl of Famous Amos, put some whole milk
them
on
up
it.
in
Yeah.
there.
Hold on a second. I just wanted to clarify. This is an hour of just this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about...
Well, chat room's already chiming in. Ghost says pops. Did we ever?
Sure.
We're gonna
Those are
move.
great.
We're gonna move to lunch in
Honey
the next
Smacks.
Yeah.
about 15 minutes, and then
Smacks
we'll
are
get to
good.
dinner to wrap it up.
Yeah.
One of my life goals is to buy one of those 10-pound bags of just the marshmallows from Lucky Charms. I'm pretty sure I can afford it, but I just got to find the
quite a
right
commitment.
time.
Splurge.
Yeah, the
That's a
right time.
splurge, yeah.
Lucky Charms for the special.
Speaking of Black Panther, Marvel Studios are making a big push to get it considered for Best Picture, despite the fact that all indications were the whole reason we're getting a new category at the Oscars, Best Popular Film, is because they felt like, oh, we should really acknowledge Black Panther. Panther. But good for them that they're pushing for Best Picture. I don't know, it's one of the best pictures I saw this year, but I don't get out of the house much because I have 2 kids. But I don't know. I think good for them that, go for the brass ring. What do you think, Kari?
I think it's great, but though a category of like popular sounds kind of silly. Or maybe it should be more,
Is it?
It's cool. It's hip, man.
Is it
it's gonna
just-
appeal to the younger crowd?
Is it just so that possibly one day a Fast and Furious movie could win an Oscar? You think that that's what that category is for?
I will
Or
cry.
maybe best box office or something like that. Like what actually got people to the theater to see it?
What's the qualification that makes it a popular movie?
They haven't
Yeah.
announced that. That's sort of the worst thing about that category. Is you're like, oh, I think it's a bad idea. It sounds like a bad idea, and they're like, well, we don't have it fleshed out yet. So let's figure that out. But
Best blockbuster. I
yeah.
think you're missing it. Like
Yeah.
you've got alliteration. You know what a blockbuster is. It's simple. Best blockbuster.
yeah, I think well,
they're
see,
going
that would
with
be
popular
that would be a
contest.
great MTV movie
That's where it
award.
goes, I don't know if that sounds right.
Does anybody care about the Oscars really though anymore?
The people who
little
go, and I think that might be it. I don't know.
It's
Yeah.
less and less every year. That's why
Yeah.
they're adding this category to
Yeah.
appease
Yeah.
like
Although
audiences.
that La La Land thing was pretty amazing when they announced the
Yeah.
wrong movie. That was
Oh,
kind of great.
whoops.
That was kind of awesome.
Great.
But yeah, if only
That's
this
my kind of comedy.
Yeah.
I love it.
So we have just a poster for The Gifted season 2, if you can show that, Anthony. And for people who watched season 1, and Kari, I specifically wanted you to note the top row. And that second
heroes and
figure,
villains.
the villain there in the top, that's Andy with the Quicksilver hair. I don't know how I
Whoa,
feel.
when does his hair change?
Yeah, I don't know. Our friend Michael Shirley actually sent this to me, and we had a long back and forth about. Apparently, that's what happens when you turn bad. You have a really bad hairstyle.
Is this a show?
This is like in the X-Men universe on
Okay.
Fox, and it was very lightly in the
side.
X-Men universe when it started, and you're just
Okay.
like, how about some more superpowers? And then it finished strong. But we kind of talked a lot about when it started how much we hated it on this show. Not Kari, but another panelist and
It
myself.
looks like the 2 leads are having a really passive-aggressive argument. They're
know
like,
what?
no.
It's
And she's
funny.
like, you know.
You're absolutely right.
You've
Because
summarized their
they're-
relationship.
They're a couple who have split up.
And she's
because-
pregnant with his baby.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Sounds like a soap opera.
yeah, I think
Yes.
I think Robbie just pretty much nailed the whole
Yes.
second season.
It looks
So
like
good.
everyone in
wrapped
that
it up.
poster escaped from an LL Bean catalog. I'm pretty sure it was just a little multi-ethnic thrown in
But
there.
a mutant LL Bean catalog.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And
Yeah,
then
they were pushing it at Comic Con. They had a giant building banner of them as well.
well, we'll obviously have plenty of time to talk more about that in the month
Yeah.
of September. And just a little
You mean
public.
this month.
I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
A little, but speaking of the month of September, a little public service. Tomorrow is Labor Day. So if you like your digital comics and you like your Marvel comics, and if you're watching this show, you probably do, it's buy one, get one free, whether it's on Comixology or Amazon or pretty much anywhere that you can digitally buy Marvel comics. Buy one, get one free. So go ahead and do that. And then I wanted to, these would be the pictures of the Hulk. Just a quick mention of the passing of a great Marvel artist named Marie Severin, who is one of those sort of like artists where she's like a favorite artist of a lot of the artists who are well known. Rob Liefeld, who co-created Deadpool and Wildcats, a bunch of other stuff. He posted some of these pictures. Yeah, there's his actual tweet. And it's just sort of this great classic style. And she helped a lot of artists with submissions. One of my favorite Spider-Man artists is a man named Ron Frenz, and he had some very nice things to say about her. So anyway, I just wanted to mention rest in peace, because your Steve Ditko's and a lot of those people get a lot of attention, and just wanted to share some of our art, some of her artwork. And at the end of the show, we have our big Iron Fist announcement, Zia. But the reminder, of course, Iron Fist this Friday on Netflix, the whole second
Whoa,
season.
already?
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh my God.
And don't let me forget our special announcement. I'm very excited to talk to Robbie, and I'm probably going to forget.
I will not.
Okay, so you also have notes, but we'll see. Anyway, so Robbie, I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your background with Spider-Man. Maybe some of like your earliest memories of like when you first saw him or read him, and you're just like, oh, I really like this character.
Sure. Well, I He's my favorite superhero, and I remember when I moved when I was a little kid. I moved when I was pre-middle school, late elementary school, and I didn't have any friends, and it was a whole new town, and I started trading those Marvel trading cards, like when Topps was overproducing any kind of trading card they could in the 90s. That was like my gateway into like sort of making friends, and if you would collect 9 of them, and they would make a whole panel in your book, and I just gravitated towards Spider-Man, and then I started reading comics. So I actually discovered comics through those trading cards.
It's kind of amazing because our aforementioned friend Michael, who used to be on this panel but moved to Memphis, that's exactly how he started reading comic books, was with those cards, because his dad would buy them for him, and he loved putting it. He brought. Do you remember, Kari? He brought in binders of them here on the show.
Still
I
have
had
them.
the cards, and I'm like, yeah, I think I have mine.
I don't
too.
have them in a binder. I have them in a shoebox, but I have
No,
them.
they're in the sleeves.
In the
Everybody's better than me.
back, on the back of them, they had stats and like little mini stories of the
Yes.
characters, and I didn't know anything about them. When you're a kid and you get a little piece of the story, you want to
just
know
looks
everything about
cool.
the story. Yeah. So, on one end, you could say that that's magical, for a little kid, and on another end, you could say it's really good marketing. It worked.
Yeah.
It really worked.
Now, I believe Kari and Zia, you both sort of grew up watching Spider-Man the Animated Series. I think we've talked about that on the show.
90s one.
The 90s one, yeah. I'm a bit older, so for me it was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I remember being about 5 and 6 watching that because I love that show. But it's sort of the same thing. You see this, and it's like that show and a little bit the Super Friends is what got me into reading comics. There's something about seeing Spider-Man on TV, and my son's 3, so I keep watching the show that you're on, Marvel Spider-Man. And I'm like, I still wonder if it's a little scary for him, but I'm just like, I'm gonna put him in front of it, and I'm just gonna make him watch it. And
Maybe just skip over the episodes with Venom.
oh, that's
then
that's a great call.
Because the other villains are not as scary, but Venom.
Yeah.
Oh man, when
Well,
I was a kid, he scared the crap out of me.
One of the
Still my
things
favorite,
that I
though.
love about the show is some of the offbeat villains that you see on it. There was a character, the villain Spot is somebody I never expected to see on the show.
Yeah.
Because when I was reading comics, he was introduced, and it was definitely like kind of a joke character, and he was treated that way on the show. But I was just like, I can't believe somebody animated him. I loved seeing him. Are there any favorites that they have had on the show, or is there anybody you're holding out hope? Like, man, I just hope one day we get to see.
Ooh, there are some characters that are about to happen in the next few arcs that I'm really excited about. Like, the cool part about this is that the 2 writers that are leading it, they were sort of just, since it's a Marvel property, they have carte blanche to pull for whatever they want.
Right.
So we've already done arcs in that universe, their own take on common arcs, like so all through the series. So I think some of my favorites, of course, everybody loves Venom. My favorite Spider-Man comic arc was Maximum Carnage, and I don't think there's. I'd love to see Carnage on the show. I don't know how they do it. It'd be tough. But like, there was some great stuff. Like, I love the classics. Like, of course you start with Vulture. Of course you start with Dr. Octopus. I mean, like, he's got one of the best rogues galleries in comics, period. So to have a lot of these characters come, I'm still trying to remember who's. Because I'm doing them, and I have to remember who's aired and who hasn't. So I need to like shut my mouth.
Right,
about
yeah,
some
exactly.
things.
You don't want to.
Yeah. So.
Well, but and the great thing about Spider-Man, of course, is when like basically the Sinister Six are 6 of the best comic book villains of all time, and some of whom have been on the show or in some. Different incarnations. You mentioned Maximum Carnage, and sort of what I love about the series like that are the fact that there were so many, like, it was one of those stories, like a lot of times Spider-Man stories were self-contained, but this had it had Captain America, Cloak and Dagger, Iron Fist, just all these other characters. And I like when Spidey branches out, because the Avengers would always be like, oh, we're just going to bring in some people and help us. And usually Spidey was stuck doing things by himself. So I sort of like that. We also have seen that on this show as well. We saw Ms. Marvel earlier this season, and I forget exactly what we saw last season, but it's the same thing. I like when you get to borrow from the Marvel universe.
Well, I think when they did the Bring on the Bad Guys arc, it was 4 or 5 episodes or something like that. That was classic Spidey for me, because he's just kind of getting his butt kicked the whole time. Yeah, and that was what I loved about the first 3 or 4 episodes, or 3 or 4 comics in Maximum Carnage, was that he's like, oh, somebody help this guy. He's got all these forces, and eventually does. I think like Black Cat comes in, and he gets some help from some other characters, and that's one of the cool things I like about this show is. That's why I liked Peter always as a character, because he didn't always have the resources, and it was always just him, you know, and he was poor most of the time growing up, and he didn't really come into his own until, you know, way later in his 20s, you know, if you follow those arcs. So, you know, to see him sort of struggle as a kid where, like, he loses the scholarship, he gets the job and loses it, he can't keep anything. And I think that's kind of one of the cool parts about that character. So seeing him as Spider-Man getting his butt kicked, it's like classic Spider-Man for me.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
I was gonna say semi-rewind, but you have permission from the chat. Hayward is like, spoilers, spill it.
Yeah, right? Of course.
Well, if the chat says it's okay, Robbie,
know,
there's really
it's
no
a
problem.
chat.
You know,
Yeah, fine.
it's always funny because it takes people a little time to like grab onto a show. Like first year nobody cared, and now like I feel like people are starting to grab on. So I've gotten so many like tweets and private messages would be like, "What happens?" Because we just left on a hiatus a couple weeks ago on a big cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Now,
So if
are you able to say when it comes back, or is that being decided? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
That the real answer is I don't
don't know.
That's not the PC answer. We'll come back, I guess.
I
Whatever
would
that
hope.
means.
Otherwise, you know, spoiler alert for people that didn't watch it. Otherwise, Doc Ock is going to live inside Peter's brain forever. So let's hope that the show comes back.
If you know, if you know the arc that they're hinting at,
Yeah.
let's just say if you're a comic book fan, you'll be pretty happy with the next 5
Yeah,
episodes.
and it's interesting because that arc, the Doc Ock as Spider-Man, just recently resurfaced in the current. They rebooted the Amazing Spider-Man series, comic book series again, and a plagiarism allegation against our friend Peter Parker, all because of that. So it's very interesting, actually. Anyway, so. One of the things, and I guess I read this in another interview you did, you were actually almost the voice of Spider-Man on the previous show.
on Ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, on Ultimate Spider-Man. Talk about how you found that out. That was the one that Drake Bell did the voice, and you know he did a great job. But you were like right there, right?
Yeah. Well, as Court put it, I was second runner up, and it was pretty early in my voiceover career. I want to say like somewhere between 2009 and 11, 10, somewhere around there. I can't remember when they started production, but like I was in there with a bunch of heavy hitters in the voiceover world. It was Drake, me, Yuri Lowenthal, who's playing Spider-Man now in the new PS4 game that's coming out, and then a handful of other people that when you do voiceover in this city, like if you do a certain thing and do it well, you know that you're competing against a handful of guys or a handful of girls.
Right.
And so I knew that I was up there, but I never knew that I was second
That
choice
close, yeah.
until Court told me at Comic-Con last year, and I was like, oh, that's a great thing to find out. You know what I mean?
At least you found out now, having been cast as Spider-Man. You
Yeah.
know, if it had something that you found out, you know, before that,
Sure.
and you're like, oh, I never got to be Spider-Man. But I was so close.
Yeah, it would have
Backhanded
been nice.
compliment?
It would have been nice back in 2010, you know.
Yeah.
But things happen for a reason, for sure.
Either when you auditioned for either the series or when you're cast, did you consciously try to avoid listening to earlier voice actors, or did you seek out the way other people had done it to try and put your own spin? What did you do homework one way or the other?
I didn't know that I was auditioning for Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of the times, new shows and new video games are codenamed, and this whole script was not only codenamed the script, but all the character names were changed. And I believe it was like Dragonfly. And I looked it up, and all I could find was like a early '70s blaxploitation female superhero. So I was like, that doesn't sound right. So,
But you would have crushed it, I'm sure.
yeah, maybe I was like, this must be something different. So, oh, this is a new property. But I had the thought in my head, like, oh, this feels a little Spider-Man, you know. But it was still not clear at all from the sides. I think some people had figured it out, but I hadn't. And it was actually really interesting because I had gotten the call to I gotten the thing to read for it from home, and all code named, and then I got a call from my agent. And they're like, "Hey, can you be at the studio at like 5 today? We had you in for something, but somebody dropped out. Can you be there?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got a session this morning, but I'll go." So I said, "Yeah, I'll make it." So I made it, and then ended up I was the last one of the day. They were all decided, and then I pulled the rug out from under somebody. But yeah, and then
That's somebody who will one day find out, like, oh, you were this close to being Spider-Man.
oh boy.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, in putting the notes together, it was sort of a reminder that there have been some really iconic voice actors who have put their spin on Spider-Man.
Oh, sure.
Of course, the best known one being Neil Patrick Harris, who did the MTV series.
Sure.
But the 90s animated series, Christopher Daniel Barnes, who was also Prince Eric in The Little Mermaid. And the one that I grew up with, Daniel Gilvezan, who was also the voice of Bumblebee on the original Transformers series. So it was like a 1-2 punch. Like all week, my TV viewing was filled with his voice.
Josh Keaton on Spectacular is definitely one of the biggest fan favorites of all time. He's a great Spider-Man voice.
Unless I'm mistaken, he's the voice of Norman Osborn on your show, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
which was really like that's the Spider-Man that I knew the most. Even though I was an adult when that show came out, and to have him in there, I was like, oh, this is cool and weird and cool. But no, he's like the world's nicest guy. So listen, there's always a Spider-Man cartoon on TV.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they might be off for a couple. Nobody owns that role. You know what I mean? And we all do it and try to put our own spin on it. So meeting other people that have done the part is friggin' awesome. I mean, if you look on like any sort of source, like behind the voice actors or IMDb, there's a ton of people who have done it. So it's an honor. Not a ton, but
That's why we need the Spider-Man episode where you all come together and everybody does all the different voices.
Right,
And
it's like when
the
they
Spider-Man
have like the
yes.
5 doctors on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And then you have like the 5 Spideys. Well, that Spider-Man Into the Multiverse movie seems to be, a bunch of different. So there they go. They can take a page from that, and that would actually be
maybe once it's my turn to get off the mask. We'll do like a web video or something funny. Who knows? Yeah.
Do you approach dialogue for Peter completely different as you do for Spidey, or is it about the same? Or
It's pretty I mean, I think it's somewhat different. Like when I used to do the first, I would say 10 episodes or so, I would put on glasses when I did Peter, and then take them off when I did Spider-Man, and it was just my own little thing to like reset my brain to remember, like, oh, this is your Clark Kent persona, and I eventually quit doing that. But he's also written differently. So if you trust the script, then you just go with that. He's a little more insecure, a little more.
Yeah, like Spidey in some ways is this guy who's like, even though he shouldn't be, he's always like on top of the world and he's having so much fun, the jokes and everything. And then as soon as that mask comes off, he's like, oh man, Aunt May's in the hospital. I don't know how to pay the bills. I got to sell my science equipment. These are all stories from the 60s, It's just like, and then on this show, it's like, oh, I can't go to school, so I'm gonna have to sell videos of myself to J. Jonah Jameson, who tells everyone I'm terrible.
Well, I
And then
always
he gets fired.
Yeah, I always liked it when Spidey. I always liked it when he was nerdier and when he was out of the. I was never crazy about the Sunday afternoon cartoon, or not cartoons, comics, because I felt like he was too cool. Like he was too Clark Kent. Like he was too handsome, dashing, whatever guy that he was. And I felt the same way about some other Spider-Man arcs. I won't say which comics, but where he was just cool, kind of cool. I was like, it didn't feel right. That's why I like Big Time. That's why I liked a couple of other arcs where you see him and he's not really in the element.
When I was reading the comics was right when he got engaged and married Mary Jane, so I have a soft spot for that. But that was a particularly cool Spidey, cool Peter, because he was married to a supermodel. They had a swanky apartment, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I don't really have to worry about anything. I'll just go and be Spider-Man, maybe sell some pictures, and that was probably a big reason why they're not married anymore, because it was like, oh yeah, it's just it's everything's too good for him, and I guess that's not what they really want. What are people saying in the chat, Kari?
Yeah, we got a couple questions. Megan Richard says, which storyline has surprised you the most so far in the show?
I would say the fact that they went as far as they did with Spider Island to the point of killing off Norman. I didn't think for like a kid's, more of a Disney XD sort of family-friendly Spider-Man that they would go that far, that they'd actually off a character. I was pretty excited about that. And then the following scene that I got to have with Harry is one of the most enjoyable like acting scenes I've ever done in a cartoon. Nice. Yeah.
And then Ivan Soto says, what has been your favorite Spidey quip joke so far?
Who knows?
Yeah.
There's so many per episode.
What's the first one that comes to your mind?
I'll think the hardest one was when I was fighting the Rhino at the dance party, because like he's throwing speakers. The tough part about it is like some other cartoons, Spider-Man would just like cling onto a wall and be like, quip, 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 and then ha, 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 and flip around.
Yeah.
In this show, he's always making jokes while he's hitting, so it's hard to hit a punchline while you're trying to literally hit a person. So, yeah, I would say that's the toughest part of it, but I don't know if it would straight come to mind. Not quite yet.
Did any, similar to the other one, any surprise you or make you really bust up laughing?
Ooh, those are the ones that usually don't make the cuts, because I'll try to do like a little improv and they'll be like, this is a kid's show, and I'm like, dang it. That was not quite a Y7 joke.
They'll be on the adult bloopers.
Yeah, maybe someday.
Your YouTube page.
It's Disney, not a chance.
I'm not releasing any of that.
Yeah.
Is it hard for you, or is it like not hard, but is it a process? Do you need to warm up between going into the voices as opposed to just talking regular, or do you like find yourself falling into talking like Peter Parker or Spider-Man when you're not doing it, or does it take some warm up to get into it?
No, this is sort of the natural timbre of my voice right about here. And Pete's way up here, he's got like a bright sort of tinny pop because he's 15.
Right.
But he's also like snappy and skinny and the voice that we chose for him. So it's tough because we record that show on Friday mornings and I work enough. And that's a tough time at 9 a.m. to roll up. So I usually wake up a little bit earlier and like try to like get the blood flowing. And I think if I'm doing like a rough tough video game thing, like where you're down here, you can like have a cup of coffee and roll into the studio and be fine. But not with that. So yeah, I definitely warm up in a different way. When I drive into work, I'll warm up my higher register. Yeah.
And definitely tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding for voice acting is that is it just you by yourself, or do you do anything with any of the
Full cast record.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Most Western animation that you're going to find is going to be either the full cast or whoever's available at the time. We'll occasionally be missing a guest star. Like with this show, there's a lot of like sort of stunt casting's not the right word, but a little bit where you might do with the scratch character who's there just filling in, and then like they'll bring in like a Disney kid or one of the Disenchanted kids to like fill in like a face actor,
So when Stan Lee was a guest star, was he there while you were?
Oh, yeah.
Great.
No, he recorded his stuff by himself, but like we met and hung out and chatted and took pictures, and like that was like first season. That was pretty bizarre because they brought me in and they were like, hey Stan, he's got tons of handlers and all this stuff. He's like, this is Robbie, he's playing Spider-Man in the show. And he's like, oh, get in here, kid, and come over here. And he like shakes my hand, and his hand is like a freaking his fingers are 9 inches long, and his hands are huge, and they're bony and old and amazing. And you think that these created all these beloved characters, this $1 billion thing out there. And then he's like, well, come here, let's do it. And he goes, well, get over here and let's do this, kid. So he takes some pictures, and the photographer's like, well, get in there, get a little closer. He's like, get over here, and he gives me a big hug, and we're taking pictures. I'm like, this is mind-blowingly bizarre. So we finish, and we chat for a little bit, and it's time for me to leave, and he just goes, all right, kid, well, you get out there and you keep fighting crime. And I was like, let's check that. I was ready to kick the bucket right now. Yeah, it was pretty magical. He's an amazing guy. Really, really sharp, really with it. So funny, so great. Yeah.
Well, that surprises me that it's a mostly cast recording, though. So I think that has to definitely. I don't know. I feel like you can get great readings and performances when it is, just somebody by themselves. But I feel like when you have people to actually play off of, that has to be.
Oh yeah. And anime is by yourself because that's ADR and you're doing it, and we do ADR by ourselves on Western shows. Video games are by yourself, but most script, like when we're doing this, we don't have any ref. If you're doing cartoons, you'll either just have a script and a full cast, or you'll have a script and maybe reference storyboards, and you'll just run through the storyboards and watch it, and then you'll go. But it's still like just like this. So if we're doing a 4-person scene, it would be the 4 of us. And the only difference from that and acting in any other scene, whether a player on TV, would be that we would take just a tiny bit between each other's lines, just a hair. That's like a technique thing, so they have time to cut it up. Because if we're having an argument scene, if we were arguing naturally, we would be stepping over each other a little bit. You can't quite do that. But yeah, so for scenes, especially like with me and Harry Osborn, my buddy Max Middleman, those were like all that emotion, all that back and forth. That's just us doing a scene.
So, what about when it's funny and, make each other laugh, or do you not look at them looking at them?
Well, just like we are right here, you have to stay on mic. So I've got a little more freedom here, but I really can't look at you while we're doing a scene. You're
but are
there.
Any facing each other?
We usually in a semicircle, much like this. So we could make eye contact, but I've also got to read the script. So you're in the presence of other people and you're hearing them live and working off of them. It's a really unique set of skills that's sort of just for voiceover. Yeah.
Just to sort of take a step aside from Spider-Man for a minute, because you were talking about anime, and then obviously because the animation was done and the mouths move, differently for another language, is there an extra trick to try and make it work, or is it all in charge of basically the people who write the English language dialogue? It's like on them to try and make it match the way the mouths move, or do you guys watch it and try and get it in there?
Talking about anime?
Yeah, an anime in particular.
It's a combination of all of it. If you've got a really good script adapter, they don't make. It depends on the price. They don't make a ton of money, and they're asked to produce a large volume. It's a livable wage, but it's hard work. So if they're in a big rush, your script might not be quite as good. Then it's going to be on you and the director to make little changes and whatever, or you just slow down, hit your marks, hit the flaps differently. It's really hard. If I were to say tell me a joke, and you told me a joke, okay, now tell me that joke 2 seconds shorter in this rhythm, blah blah blah, blah, and still make it funny. Could you do it? And it's hard. It's manipulating language in a way that's only for anime. So I think the thing is, back in the day, people used to give anime a hard time because it could be a little bit stilted, and you wouldn't always have the best actors in there, doing it. But I think now there's sort of a new kind of renaissance where myself and a lot of people in the last 10 years especially really want to make dubs good, and sort of pull up the quality of them, and that requires an incredibly unique skill set. You can bring in a great actor, and they'll just fall apart if you ask them to dub something, or not. But it takes some time. Yeah.
Favorite anime you've done?
All time?
Or top 3?
Top 3? I really did a show one called Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress is one of my favorites. It's the Attack on Titan people. I did Sailor Moon's one of my top ones, and then Hunter x Hunter is one of my favorites. Yeah.
Now, obviously, the Sailor Moon fan base, very passionate.
Sure.
What's the difference between being a voice in Sailor Moon and interacting with fans of that show and being the voice of Spider-Man? Is it about the same, or is it?
Is there a difference between a 30-year-old woman and a 5-year-old boy? Because it's usually about how it is. No, the great thing about Sailor Moon is that it's generational. You have all of the original fans from the '90s, so people my age, and then you've also got brand new fans. And they've come in because of their parents or because of Sailor Moon Crystal, and they like them both. So it's freaking awesome. Spider-Man is different. Spider-Man is more like I get a call from my buddy from college, and he goes, "My kid loves your show," and then I send him a signed toy, and I said, "Good, I'm glad your kid likes it." Or the craziest part about this show is the most I've heard is that little girls really like it. Like I've heard more my niece, my sister, my daughter like this show way more than I have heard that about little boys. I mean, of course, all little boys love Spider-Man, but
sure.
I really love that. I don't know if it's because it's more of a story-driven show or what assumptions you want to make because of that, but I think that's awesome.
Well, I think it doesn't hurt that you have, a strong character like Gwen Stacy as doing something that is not just damsel in distress. It's like, oh, let me be really smart here, even though, I'm not Spider-Gwen, normally. And then, of course,
Spider-Girl.
Spider-Girl
is there?
Yeah.
Ghost Spider, I think, is her new moniker in some of the shows, I think. Isn't that right in the comics?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Gwen Stacy.
Yeah,
Spider-Gwen.
Yeah, Spider-Gwen is like never actually her name, but that's what everybody calls her because, and that it's a great cosplay more than anything. But I think people love that character, and it's great. So that was one of the things that I was noticing. It's sort of like Peter has these, really smart friends. So it's like, you don't have to call, Mr. Fantastic. You don't have to call Tony Stark because he probably won't take your call. You don't have to call these guys because you're like, oh, no, we can do the science part. Don't worry about that. And I kind of like that, science. Well, I was going to say something really corny, but like science is also sort of a hero in the story, and I think that helps. Maybe that's because it is, a Y7 Disney XD show, and they wanted there to be that element. But that was one of the things that I was noticing. It was like, Miles Morales is actually, able to do the science stuff. That was one of the things I wanted to mention because to me, I don't know of an instance where you have Peter and Miles both as Spider-Man at the same time, and I think that's sort of an interesting thing that they do on this show. Talk a little bit about that dynamic from sort of the storytelling of having two Spider-Men on the show.
Well, I think that was the question from the beginning. And I'm guessing on the parts of I'm trying to get in the head of an exec, but the tough part was you've got Homecoming coming out, which is that's the root Spider-Man right now, but also this buzz about Miles, and should the next show be a Miles show? So I think putting them together was a way of them feeling like, okay, well, we can stay with that, but also have him present. So they created their whole new canon for this cartoon, and even though they pulled off classic arcs, it's its own thing. So I don't see any problem with it. I mean, we've got Spider-Verse, we've got Spider Island, we've got a lot of precedents for having multiple Spider-Men at the same time. So
yeah, and I've noticed just sort of the obviously if I'm on the show, there might be some nerd tendencies. I did notice in the credits that consulting producer is Dan Slott, who wrote Amazing Spider-Man literally for 10 years, and he just finished a couple months ago. And so obviously a lot of these stories are, from his era that he was writing. So I think that sort of helps get some of the modern sensibility into this show. But there's plenty of classic stories too that find their way.
They were pulling off of Big Time quite a bit. When Pete goes and works at Horizon Labs and Max Modell and that whole thing. But they wanted to find a way to young it up, and so they made it Horizon High, and then they have Midtown High. So I think that was a cool move on their part, and also they wanted the science thing to play in heavily to it. I think personally, maybe they overplayed their hand a little bit in the first season, but they found that sweet spot in the second season where, you're set up in this world and it's still the root thing, but it's not science every episode. So I think that I think the fans are digging on that a little bit better this season.
Were there any episodes in particular that you were really excited to record because of a story arc or villains that you had to fight? Just ones that you were like, oh my God, yes.
Totally. The Venom stuff this season was big. Anything with JJ, the unmasking scene. I love all the Doc Ock stuff. I really think Scott Menville, who you probably know from Robin, Teen Titans Go and stuff, I think he does a really cool job with his Ock, and there's a lot more really good stuff coming up in the next season. So I'm really excited about that. And then I really enjoyed all the stuff with Harry. I think that all of that I think the Harry Peter relationship was the best part of season 1 for my money. Yeah, I think it drove things along. Anytime I had a real scene with him, that's the tough thing about episodic TV and in superhero shows is like, how do you keep their interest episode to episode if it's just Monster of the Week is tough. And like going back to Sailor Moon, I think they did a great job of it because it was Monster of the Week, but there was a story, they were trying to follow through. And the fact that we did a Spider-Man show that had a 26 episode full character arc between two characters, that's pretty dope. Like that's what I would get excited about, because I knew that going in, so I knew that from episode 1 every scene that we laid a groundwork for, it was going to get a payoff by the end of the season. So I think that was what I was most excited about.
So even though this show is Marvel TV Weekly, we do talk about the movies in here. Now, do you have a favorite on-camera actor who has portrayed Spidey so far? I mean, Tom Holland is sort of the closest to your version.
Sure.
And he's definitely the closest to, like, Peter as we meet him initially, like Amazing Fantasy 15. Like, that first ever Spider-Man is very close to that.
I'm a Toby guy, man.
I'm so glad to hear it. Amy, who's not here, does not like Tobey Maguire.
Oh, say what you want about the other two.
Yeah.
That first one, he's Peter for me. And I'm biased because I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan.
Sure.
So like, yeah. So
Anthony in the voice.
I love
Yes.
Sam Raimi, yeah.
So for me, he was my favorite. Tom Holland's a close second.
Yeah, and I think that people are a little harsh on the Andrew Garfield movies, but I think every scene with him and Gwen Stacy, I'm just like, he doesn't even have to put the suit on. I just liked watching the two of them together, and I thought that worked. That was the best thing about those two movies.
I thought he was a great Spider-Man. I just thought he was too cool of a Peter Parker.
Yeah, well, that's true. He's definitely too cool. You're right.
Yeah, and that's that whole too cool thing. Like, I think he could have played Peter out of high school and like out of college. I think that would have been better.
That's what we were saying.
Yeah.
He feels like college graduate level, which is some of the comics. That's the Cloak and Dagger one I was reading, where he's like, I'm in grad school. I'm like, yes, I would buy that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I felt. And he's a little more established and all of that. Yeah, definitely.
There's things to like about all of them, but so a big vote for Toby. So we'll have to talk about that with Amy. Now we only have a few minutes, and one of the things that we did want to talk about are sort of some of our favorite supporting characters. But a few weeks ago we did our favorite Spidey villains. So I wanted to put you on the spot first, Robbie, and 3 that come to mind. And you know what? We won't hold you to it if all of a sudden you list 3 and you're like, oh wait, I forgot somebody.
Top 3 Spider-Man villains. Easy. Okay. Mysterio, Venom, Carnage. Done. Too easy.
I like how easy that was.
Yeah, I love the body horror aspect of Venom. I think that's something that, like, how I'm so ballsy to put that in comics, to be like, here's a character that can just go up to you and drown you with his own bodily fluid. Like, how messed up is that? And I remember one Venom panel where he's punching Carnage and he's just got this ball, like a bowling ball for a bicep. And I was just like, this guy's so cool. He's mean and he's tough and he's like, he speaks with the royal we and he's got that split personality. And I really liked him. And I just love Carnage because he's just unfettered evil, and Mysterio because he's got a fishbowl for a head. And he does magic.
We were talking about that last week because
Yeah.
there's this idea, I guess, that Jake Gyllenhaal's going to be Mysterio. And I'm like, they have to have the fishbowl head, because if you don't do the fishbowl head,
I'd be bummed out.
Yeah, it was just like,
I think everyone would be bummed out.
Yeah, it's like in the X-Men movies, Magneto has the helmet at least a little bit. Like you can't not show it.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to see his face, some we get it, but you have to put it on there.
Yeah.
Real quick question. I know you didn't plan on me asking a question.
That's all right.
But I was wondering, Robbie, what's your take on the Venom movie coming up, since he's one of your favorite villains?
I you know what? I get on people on the internet all the time about judging stuff before it comes out.
I'm the same
So
way.
I
like
am
it.
going to hold my judgment, but I have had a lot of hope with the last few teasers and trailers if they lean into the body horror. Like when they're talking about he was just like when he's talking about biting that guy's arms and legs and head off and he was just a turd just floating around, and like when he was talking about drowning the guy and all, if they lean into it, it could be good. It could be, and I love Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
So
He's just such a great. I've been on the Tom Hardy train since Bronson.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like if he does a great job, then it's going to be a great. And the Venom voice for me is dead nuts. I think it's perfect.
Right, and you have to make sure you get it right.
Yep.
And the fact that it's not connected to Spider-Man in any way is interesting, but I still think it looks cool, and I'm excited for it. And by the way, that comes out like next month, I think.
I don't think there's any way it's not going to be connected to Spider-Man.
You think that they're just telling us that so that we can be surprised when
that,
like Tom Holland walks through or something?
I think they will hint at it so hard, and they will find a way to make lawyer love, and they will find a way to have it happen if the movie's good.
The problem, though, is the rating, because they want to do an R rating for Venom, but Spider-Man's very PG-13 to be more family-friendly, and how does that convene?
I've seen some pretty scary PG-13 movies lately. Yeah, I don't know.
Quick question from the chat. So you have worked in video games, and this kind of ties in. Stardrew says, did you like any particular Spider-Man video game?
Yes. It was the tough one. It was the one where Spider-Man Noir came in, Shattered Dimensions. Yeah, that was one of my favorites. Absolutely. And also the licensed movie game where oh god, if chins could kill, what's his name? Ash from Ash and Evil Dead. I'm dying here. He's one
Bruce
of my
Campbell.
favorites.
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell did the tutorial
that was
where you swing around the training zone.
That's Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, Spider-Man
that.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my favorite.
It's pretty good stuff. And Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, because I'm the voice of Spider-Man in that.
So obviously,
of course.
No bias there. Because we only have a few minutes, we'll sort of run through this. Robbie, you can think about this because we already put you on the spot. We're just going to talk about some of our favorite supporting characters in the Spider-Man universe. And I will go first, and then Zia, you'll be next. So for me, number 1 has to be Aunt May. Number 2, J. Jonah Jameson. And my number 3 is sort of an odd choice for some people, but it's a Black Cat, because of at the time where I was reading the comics, they were actually like dating, and I was like, I really liked them together. And then Mary Jane came in and ruined everything. But, I just really like her with what I like most about her. She loves Spider-Man. can't stand Peter Parker. Just that mask comes off, she's like, put it back on. Go ahead, Zia.
I know that you like MJ, but I'm on the Gwen Stacy train. Sorry.
Love Gwen Stacy too. I'm always been Team MJ because of when I was reading comics, really. But
Fair.
yeah, and her story is so dark and so tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I like that stuff. Goodness. So Norman Osborn, obviously, he plays a huge part in Spider-Man's entire life there, with Gwen Stacy as well.
We need to get to some new stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then J.
we're out
Jonah
of time.
Jameson. He's always
J. Jonah Jameson is
one of my
on
favorites.
most people's list. Yeah. What do you have, Kari?
I would definitely go with Black Cat as a top fave because she's just so fun. Cartoons that really stood out to me. And then, Jameson, just to see his feathers ruffled all the time is so entertaining. Of how flustered he can get. I was like, no. I'm like, wait, no, I'm blanking.
It's hard now.
It's hard.
Well, that's the thing. And Amy, not here, but she had Green Goblin, Gwen Stacy, and Vulture. She loves Vulture because, obviously, Michael Keaton's so
I was
great.
thinking them together, like buddies.
Who's that? No, it could be anybody.
It.
She threw them in there.
I was like, or like they interact more. Yeah, Vulture was interesting. Well, all the different villains are always all the rotating ones because it's
sure
just entertaining to see how he
Can I
messes
slip
them
one
up.
in here?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's kind of specific. It's Kingpin, but from the animated series because
Yeah.
I love like the dichotomy of like having Spider-Man thwart all the villains that he throws his way, you know, and then like they would cut back to like the Kingpin in his building is like trying to scheme up the next plan and everything. I love that. I thought it was a great dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and by the way, in Marvel Comics right now, the mayor of New York City, Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. So just a little tidbit there. All right, so Robbie, supporting cast, who do you think are the top three?
I'm gonna do a cheat answer. I'm gonna do the whole Osborn family, including Harry's son that gives him the evil look because he knows that he killed those. I'm a huge Aunt May fan, obviously, and Flash Thompson.
Love
Flash.
Thompson.
What a great redemption arc, and then also tragedy. You get your legs lopped off, and then you get to become Agent Venom.
Yeah.
He's one of my faves. I love Flash.
Yeah, he has sort of a great redeeming moment in Amazing Spider-Man 800, which was just a few months ago. Allegedly, he is now departed, Flash Thompson, but
We'll see.
Just ask Jean Grey. She's died 3 times.
I just remember panels of I just remember a couple panels when I was a kid when he would be like, I want to go out there and fight the bad guys, but he has nothing. He's just a dude.
He's just a dude.
He's just a dude.
All right. Well, Robbie, we really appreciate you spending time with us here.
Course.
It's very exciting. And whenever the show comes back, we look forward to welcoming it to our TVs and me carefully selecting episodes for my son to watch at 3. And I was thinking he watches DuckTales. It's the same network, so obviously it can't be too far off. All right. So we have our special announcement. Zia, do you want to tell people what's going on with Iron Fist?
So, Iron Fist is coming out this Friday, September 7th. It's going to be out on Netflix. And guess who's going to be on the Iron Fist panel here at AfterBuzz TV?
Us!
Yeah!
And some other people to be determined.
Yeah, we don't know
and
yet, but at least us.
we will tell you next week what the thank you. We will tell you next week when you can catch it. I think we're going to do bunches of episodes. We're not going to do 13 of them.
Yeah.
So we'll probably watch 4 or 5. And look, we know people hate on Danny Rand from season 1, but we are Team Danny and we're very excited. This season does look really good. Kari, not a big season 1 fan, but you feel from what you see for season 2.
The second season does look much better, and I think it's perfect you're on the panel.
I would have been so upset if I wasn't.
He was doing the Iron Fist turn the whole time.
I'm the only
So
one
they're
who
like,
likes him. How are they not going to put me on the panel?
Yes.
Anyway, so we will tell you more about that. But Robbie, thank you so much.
Thanks for
and if
having me.
people want to follow you on Twitter, it's at Robbie Daymond. And your Instagram was something different. It was Robbie Dangerous.
Don't say that out loud.
Oh, okay.
Of course, say that out
But
loud.
I love the picture of your daughter with the shirt that says "My Daddy Is," and it just has a Spider-Man face.
Oh,
so
yeah.
not a lot of
Really
people
cute.
can actually have their kid wear that.
That's
so,
true.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, and you can follow me at ChristianDMZ on Twitter and Instagram. And Zia, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Zia_land. It's XIA_land.
And did you hear that? Twitter too. She's on Twitter now.
That's what, I have 1 tweet, guys.
Yay!
Yeah.
For another show.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't for this show. Thanks.
Yeah.
And Kari.
Yes. You can find me online at Kari D. Lane. That's KaridLane.
And at Amy Cassandra MTZ, since she wasn't here. And of course in the booth at Tony B. Tony _ Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back next Sunday night, and we will definitely talk a little bit about Iron Fist Season 2 and so much more. Until then, as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.